Directions: read this story, then answer questions 1 through 6. Excerpt from The Boy in the Striped Pajamas by John Boyne. For months now, Bruno has been looking out of his bedroom window at the garden and the bench with the plaque on it, the tall fence and the wooden telegraph poles, and all the other things he had written to grandmother in his most recent letter. And as often as he had watched the people, all the different kinds of people in their striped pajamas, it has never really occurred to him to wonder what it was all about. It was as if it were another city entirely, the people all living and working together side by side, with the house where he lived. And were they really so different? All the people in camp wore the same clothes, those pajamas and their striped cloth caps too. And all the people who wandered through his house, with the exception of Mother, Gretel, and him, wore uniforms of varying quality and decoration, and caps and helmets with bright red and black armbands, and carried guns and always looked terribly stern, as if we were all very important really, and no one should think otherwise. What exactly was the difference, he wondered to himself, and who decided which people wore the striped pajamas and which people wore the uniforms? Of course, sometimes the two groups mixed. He'd seen the people from his side of the fence on the other side of the fence, and when he watched it, it was clear that they were in charge. The pajama people all jumped to attention whenever the soldiers approached, and sometimes they fell to the ground, and sometimes they didn't even get up and had to be carried away instead. It's funny that I've never wondered about those people, Bruno thought. And it's funny that when you think of all the times the soldiers go over there, and he had even seen Father go over there on many occasions, that none of them had ever been invited back to the house. Sometimes, not very often but sometimes, a few of the soldiers stayed to dinner, and when they did, a lot, frothy drinks were served, and the moment Gretel and Bruno had put the last forkful of food in their mouths, they were sent away to their rooms. And then there was a lot of noise downstairs, and some terrible singing too. Father and Mother obviously enjoyed the company of the soldiers. Bruno could tell that. But they never once invited any of the striped pajama people to dinner. Leaving the house, Bruno went round the back and looked up towards his own bedroom window, which, from down here, did not look quite so high anymore. You could probably jump out of it and not do too much damage to yourself, he considered, although he couldn't imagine the circumstances in which he would try such an idiotic thing. Perhaps if the house were on fire, and he was trapped in there, but even then it would seem risky. He looked as far to his right as he could see, and the tall fence seemed to carry on in the sunlight, and he was glad that it did because it meant that he didn't know what was up ahead, and he could walk and find out, and that was what exploration was about. After all, there was one good thing that Herr Liszt had taught him about in their history lessons. Men like Christopher Columbus and Amerigo Vespucci, men with such adventurous stories and interesting lives that it only confirmed in Bruno's mind that he wanted to be like them when he grew up. Before heading off in that direction, though, there was one final thing to investigate, and that was the bench. All these months he'd been looking at it and staring at the plaque from a distance and calling it the bench with the plaque, but he still had no idea what it said. Looking left and right to make sure that no one was coming, he ran over to it and squinted as he read the words. It was only a small bronze plaque, and Bruno read it quietly to himself.
Presented on the occasion of the opening of...
He hesitated.
Aldous Camp.
He considered, stumbling over the name as usual.
June 1940.
He reached out and touched it for a moment, and the bronze was very cold. So he pulled his fingers away before taking a deep breath and beginning his journey. The one thing Bruno tried not to think about was that he had been told on countless occasions by both Mother and Father that he was not allowed anywhere near the fence or the camp, and most particularly that exploration was banded out with no exceptions. Which quotation best supports the central theme of this excerpt? A. It was as if it were another city entirely, the people all living and working together side by side with the house where he lived. B. He had been told on countless occasions by both Mother and Father that he was not allowed anywhere near the fence or the camp, and most particularly that exploration was banded out with. C. He reached out and touched it for a moment, and the bronze was very cold, so he pulled his fingers away before taking a deep breath and beginning his journey. D. And who decided which people wore the striped pajamas and which people wore the uniforms? Number 2. Lines 44 through 47 reveal Bruno feels A. Scared, B. Lonely, C. Excited, D. Adventurous. Number 3. In lines 49 through 54, Bruno decides to investigate the bench because A. He had been staring at the bench with the plaque for months but still didn't know what the plaque said. B. He had been staring at it from his bedroom window and wanted to be able to tell his grandmother what the plaque said in his next letter. C. He needed to leave the house because the party was too loud and there were no other children to keep him occupied. D. It purposely wanted to defy his parents' orders of staying away from the bench. Number 4. How does Bruno's description of his location and the people surrounding him contribute to the plot? A. It demonstrates the seriousness of the situation where Bruno currently lives. B. It reveals how Bruno's father is a Nazi officer and he lives at a concentration camp. C. It emphasizes the difference between the prisoners and the soldiers. D. It explains how the camp was created and dedicated in 1940. Number 5. Which conclusion is best supported by the details in the excerpt? A. Bruno realizes he needs to stop the injustices happening around him. B. Gretel will secretly allow Bruno to continue to explore the fence line. C. There will be trouble ahead for Bruno because he didn't listen to his parents. D. The partygoers will catch Bruno disobeying the rules and harshly punish him. Short response. Number 6. What theme is developed in lines throughout excerpt from The Boy in the Striped Pajamas? Use 2 details from the story to support your response. Reading comprehension. Directions. Read the story, then answer the questions 7 through 12.
I had entered a living hell on Earth.
Hiroshima survivor remembers. When Sunao Suboi was a 20-year-old college student, he faced a living hell on Earth. He doesn't need another reminder of this time when he witnessed the horrors of nuclear warfare. The facial scars he's carried for 7 decades are proof enough. Still, he brings out a black and white photograph and points to the shaved head of a young man looking away from the lens.
That's me,
he said.
We were hoping we would find some sort of medical help, but there was no treatment available and no food or water. I thought I had reached the end.
The location is Miyuki Bridge, Hiroshima, 3 hours after a U.S. B-29 bomber dropped a 15-kiloton nuclear bomb on the city on the morning of August 6, 1945. Between 60,000 and 80,000 people were killed instantly, and the death toll rose to 140,000 in months after. In the photo, one of the few surviving images taken in Hiroshima that day, Suboi is sitting on the road with several other people, staring at the gutted buildings around them. To one side, police officers douse schoolchildren with cooking oil to help soothe the pain of their burns. In 2015, Japan marked the 70th anniversary of the first nuclear attack in history. There are 183,000 registered hibakusha, or Japanese atomic bomb survivors, and many are now facing the end of their lives, with an average age of 80.
People like me are losing the strength to talk about their experiences and continue the campaign against nuclear weapons.
Suboi, a retired school principal, said he's traveled the world to warn of the horrors of nuclear warfare. Each person a unique memory of the morning of August 6th and what came after, but all of them still seem to hold disbelief at the size and scale of destruction. Suboi remembers hearing a loud bang, then being blown into the air and landing 10 yards away. He regained consciousness to find he had been burned over most of his body, his shirt sleeves and pant legs ripped off by the force of the blast.
My arms were badly burned, and there seemed to be something dripping from my fingertips,
Suboi said.
My back was incredibly painful, but I had no idea what had just happened. I had no idea it was a nuclear bomb, and that I'd been exposed to radiation. There was so much smoke in the air that you could barely see 100 meters ahead. But what I did see convinced me that I had entered a living hell on Earth. There were people calling after members of their family. I saw a schoolgirl with her eye hanging out of its socket. People looked like ghosts, bleeding and trying to walk before collapsing. There were charred bodies everywhere, including in the river. I looked down and saw a man clutching a hole in his stomach, trying to stop his organs from spilling out.
He was taken to a hospital, where he remained unconscious for more than a month. And when he finally awoke, Japan was defeated in World War II and was under the control of the United States and its allies.
I had no idea that the war had ended,
he said. Since then, Suboi has been hospitalized 11 times, including 3 occasions when doctors told him he was about to die. He takes drugs for several illnesses, including 2 cancer diagnoses, which he says are connected to his exposure to radiation. Now the A-bomb survivors' stories are part of history. Still, the hibakusha are trying to ensure that their experiences do not die with them, at a time when the world is facing nuclear threats from North Korea. Suboi helps lead a nationwide organization of atomic and hydrogen bomb sufferers called Hidankyo. However, many of them are getting too old to tell their stories and travel.
In 10 years, I'd be surprised if there are many of us left.
Hiroshi Shimuzu, a Hidankyo official, said,
If the hibakusha continue to speak out against nuclear weapons, then other people will follow suit. That's why we have to continue our campaign for as long as we are physically able,
he said. Hiroshima and Kunitachi, a small city in western Tokyo with a population of A-bomb survivors, have tried to set up storyteller events for people to learn about the attacks. Hidankyo, meanwhile, has reached out to the children and grandchildren of Hibakusha. In July 2015, Yoshiko Kajimoto, an 84-year-old survivor, recounted her experiences via Skype to members of the British Parliament. As of August 2014, it is reported that as many as 450,000 people died from the effects of the 2 atomic bombs. Hiroko Hatakeyama, a survivor who was 6 years old in 1945, says it's her duty as a survivor to keep talking about the bombing, to honor the memory of those who are no longer with us. Tsuboi makes his annual pilgrimage to Hiroshima Peace Park on August 6th to release a lantern along the Motoyasu River to guide the spirits of the dead. At that same spot, thousands fled to escape the heat of the nuclear blast. Tsuboi has spoken with Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe.
I will ask him to do everything in his power to rid the world of nuclear weapons.
Tsuboi said.
I will continue to repeat that demand until my last breath.
Number 7. Which quotation from the passage Organization for Survivors best explains why some nuclear bombing survivors want to tell their stories? A.
If the Hibakusha continue to speak out against nuclear weapons, then other people will follow suit.
B.
My arms were badly burned, and there seemed to be something dripping from my fingertips.
Tsuboi said. C.
We were hoping we would find some sort of medical help, but there was no treatment available, and no food or water. I thought I had reached the end.
D.
I will ask him to do everything in his power to rid the world of nuclear weapons.
Tsuboi said.
I will continue to repeat that demand to my last breath.
Number 8. Which of these statements would be most important to include in an objective summary of the article? A. Tsuboi could hardly believe the horrific images he saw at the nuclear bomb blast. B. One elderly survivor of the nuclear bomb blast used Skype to recount her experiences to others. C. It is almost impossible to comprehend how anyone survived a 15-kiloton nuclear bomb blast. D. Many survivors of the nuclear bomb blast are now elderly and facing the end of their lives. Number 9. Read the following selection from the section Honoring the Memories. Tsuboi has spoken with Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe.
I will ask him to do everything in his power to rid the world of nuclear weapons.
Tsuboi said.
I will continue to repeat that demand until my last breath.
Which conclusion is best supported by the selection above? A. Tsuboi believes that Japan's Prime Minister has the power to rid the world of nuclear weapons. B. Tsuboi often speaks to Japan's Prime Minister about ridding the world of nuclear weapons. C. Tsuboi is increasingly fearful that another nuclear war will happen before he takes his last breath. D. Tsuboi realizes he needs the help of the government to prevent another nuclear war. Number 10. The author develops the central idea of the article by A. Explaining what happened to Japan in World War II after it was hit by the nuclear bomb. B. Stating that Japan recently marked the 70th anniversary of the first nuclear bomb attack in history. C. Describing what a group called Hidankyo has been doing for many years. D. Identifying the location of the photograph of Tsuboi and others taken after the nuclear bomb blast. Number 11. What is the role of the section
I had no idea it was a nuclear bomb
in the development of the article? A. It describes the horrors of the nuclear attack and what the aftermath looks like for people. B. It emphasizes the importance of ridding the world of nuclear weapons. C. It provides a scientific explanation for the aftermath of a nuclear attack. D. It explains why the Hibakusha are fighting so hard to get the Japanese government to stop their nuclear weapons testing. Short response, number 12. Why does Tsuboi use the term living hell on earth to describe the situation after the nuclear bomb attack at Hiroshima? Use 2 details from the article to support your response. Einstein urges FDR to build nuclear weapons in World War II. Editor's note: on August 2, 1939, Albert Einstein signed a letter that would change the world. With 2 other physicists, Enrico Fermi and Leo Szilard, Einstein wrote a letter to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. These physicists had grown very concerned about World War II in Europe. They wanted to convince the president to build an atom bomb before Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany did. Roosevelt was convinced by the letter and ordered the start of what would become one of the most costly efforts in American history, the Manhattan Project. This project mobilized tens of thousands of engineers and scientists. Billions of dollars were spent to create the first nuclear weapon. Roosevelt died before the weapon was completed. The next president, Harry S. Truman, found out about the Manhattan Project only when he took office. Truman used atomic weapons in the bombings of the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which ended World War II. Some believe that Einstein's letter would eventually lead to the nuclear arms race between the US and the Soviet Union that began after the end of World War II. Einstein was later quoted as saying, "I made one great mistake in my life when I signed that letter to President Roosevelt recommending that atom bombs be made, but there was some justification, the danger that the Germans would make them." Uranium may be turned into a new and important source of energy, from Albert Einstein to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Sir, some recent work by Enrico Fermi and L. Szilard, which has been communicated to me in writing, leads me to expect that the element uranium may be turned into a new and important source of energy in the immediate future. Certain aspects of the situation which have arisen seem to call for watchfulness and, if necessary, quick action on the part of your administration. I believe, therefore, that it is my duty to bring to your attention the following facts and recommendations. In the course of the last 4 months, the work of Joliot in France and of Fermi and Szilard in America has increased the likelihood that it may be possible to set up a nuclear chain reaction in a large amount of uranium. This would generate huge amounts of power and large quantities of new radium-like elements. Now it appears almost certain that this could be achieved in the immediate future. Bombs might prove to be too heavy. This new phenomenon would also lead to the construction of bombs. It is conceivable, though not certain, that extremely powerful bombs of a new type may be constructed thanks to this discovery. A single bomb of this type, carried by boat and exploded in a port, might very well destroy the whole port and some of the surrounding territory. However, such bombs might prove to be too heavy for transportation by air. The United States has only very poor ores from which to extract uranium, and only moderate quantities of them. There are better reserves of uranium in Canada and the former Czechoslovakia. The most important source of uranium is the Belgian Congo. In view of this situation, you may want to have some permanent contact maintained between your administration and a group of physicists who are working on chain reactions in America. To achieve this, you may want to entrust this task a person who has your confidence, who could serve you in an unofficial capacity. His responsibilities might include the following: A. To approach government departments, keep them informed of further developments in chain reactions, and put forward recommendations for government action. Particular attention should be given to the problem of limited uranium ore for the United States. B. To speed up the experimental work, which is currently being carried out within the limits of the budgets of university laboratories, by helping to provide funds through his contacts with private individuals who are willing to contribute to this cause. He could perhaps also seek the cooperations of industrial laboratories which have the necessary equipment. Germany has actually stopped the sale of uranium. I understand that Germany has actually stopped the sale of uranium from the Czechoslovakian mines, which Germany has taken over. That Germany should have taken such early action might perhaps be understood on the ground that the son of the German Undersecretary of State, von Weizsäcker, is attached to the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute in Berlin. That is where some of the American work on uranium is now being retested. Yours very truly, Albert Einstein. Number 13. Which sentence from the letter best supports the idea that Fermi and Szilard would have a hard time getting the material ready for a nuclear chain reaction? A. It is conceivable, though not certain, that extremely powerful bombs of a new type may be constructed thanks to the discovery. B. The United States has only very poor ores from which to extract uranium, and only moderate quantities of them. C. To approach government departments, keep them informed of further developments in chain reactions, and put forward recommendations for government action. D. He could perhaps also seek the cooperation of industrial laboratories, which have the necessary equipment. Number 14. Which idea from the letter is best supported by the final paragraph? I understand that Germany has actually stopped the sale of uranium from the Czechoslovakian mines, which Germany has taken over. That Germany should have taken such early action might perhaps be understood on the ground that the son of the German Undersecretary of State von Weizsäcker is attached to the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute in Berlin. That is where some of the American work on uranium is now being retested. A. The most important source of uranium was the Belgian Congo. B. It would be helpful to provide private funds to the scientists. C. Quick action on the part of the administration was necessary. D. Nuclear reactions would be able to create powerful bombs. Number 15. Einstein's central idea in the letter is developed by A. Explaining the effects of a nuclear bomb and detailing the results in places that bombs had already affected. B. Explaining the effects of a nuclear bomb and giving reasons why scientists should be stopped from building one. C. Describing the work on nuclear chain reactions and praising the scientists for their speed and dedication. D. Describing the work on nuclear chain reactions and listing reasons why knowing about it was important to FDR. Number 16. Which of these statements would be most important to include in an objective summary of the letter? A. Fermi and Szilard were working with great dedication for 4 months. B. The creation of nuclear chain reactions would lead to construction of bombs. C. FDR needed to be wise in trusting the person who could contact the physicists. D. It'd be helpful to scientists to have the help of industrial laboratories. Number 17. Why did Einstein include the section, Germany has actually stopped the sale of uranium, in his letter to the president? A. He was informing the president how Hitler was planning to stop a nuclear attack on Germany. B. He was explaining how Germany embedded a spy into the American Research Center in Berlin. C. Einstein was making a claim that Germany had already discovered the importance of uranium in building nuclear weapons. D. Einstein wanted to prevent the Germans from stealing American ideas about uranium. Short response. Number 18. What central claim is being argued in Einstein urges FDR to build nuclear weapons in World War II? Use 2 details from the letter to support your response.